Wrong thing, wrong thing, wrong thing. Ha ha. Hello and welcome to today's episode of Live Sessions with GM. My name is Guy, and of course, well, you're watching it. So that's what we're doing. We're doing live sessions today. I am glad to see all of you in chat. It's wonderful to see so many people here from all over the world tuning in for today's show. It's really amazing, and I have to say, maybe it's because it's the festive season, or I don't know, but I just have to say it's absolutely amazing that you folks come together and join me for an hour or two to talk about our favorite hobby and to engage and just have fun. It's really, really heartwarming that you guys do even arrive, which is wonderful. It's absolutely brilliant. So hopefully we can keep you entertained and work together to make sure that we just have a lot of fun. Work in the morning, Scorched Claw. I hear you. I must admit, this Kickstarter book, A Complete Guide to Nautical Campaigns, it's absolutely been an amazing process that I have been going on to make this book a reality, to make sure that it comes through. And it's tough. It's really, really tough. And it's not tough because of what it is. And I realized that I didn't align this for the new layout, so I'm just going to move you over there. So now you're going to be situated over there. I'm going to bring this down a little bit. There we go. It's a bit more balanced, isn't it? So we're going to do that. All right. So yes, this is. What do you guys think? I've been playing around. You know, I've been trying to make this space more interesting, and yesterday there was a video that released actually a few hours ago on amazing Kickstarters, and if you haven't seen that, I suggest you're going to have a look at it because they really are amazing. But we've been playing around with the green screen studio, so if you haven't watched that video yet, I can go. I know the audio is going to get bad, but I can go all the way back here now, almost into this room. I can actually go all the way out, and then I can walk around. So why did we want to do this? I don't know. To me it just looks cool. I've tweaked the lighting, so yesterday the lighting was not very good, so that's all been done to make it work. And so there we are. It's not a scarf, it's part of the shirt. It's actually part of the shirt. So the whole thing, so you can't pull it up, but it's like this gigantic collar on the shirt. So there we go. I kind of like it, especially now that it's winter. So there you are. Yeah, the idea, Scorched Claw, you're right on the money there in terms of the lecture style space. What we are doing, and I'm actually busy, I am literally waiting for an Amazon delivery again this morning, for a cable which will allow me to be able to wear a microphone that's wireless, and then I can move around the whole space and go all the way back here to the desk and pick up books and stuff. Is it going to add to the videos? I don't know, but I think we should make them a little bit more fun anyway. So yeah, we continue to try, and we've got some feedback from people already, which is lovely. And so yes, we are definitely getting there. Right, we've got a whole bunch of stuff to get through today. We're going to sort of talk a little bit about 2019, what happened, get wax lyrical, you know, as one usually does around this time of year. We're going to talk about some Kickstarter stuff. We're going to talk about the book, if we want to. We can talk about the book. And, of course, always, we're going to be answering your questions. So that's the biggest thing, is if you've got questions, you've seen them coming up already. Landon has got a question there where he's put the word question in front of it, nice and bold, so I can actually see it. So that's the way to do it. So we'll answer Landon's question. Let's have a look at Landon's question. Where the hell has it gone? Right, there, Landon. What is the biggest difference between this book and the last book? We're talking about the two books that I have been working on. The first one was A Complete Guide to Epic Campaigns, and now this one is A Complete Guide to Nautical Campaigns. And Epic Campaigns released last year now in October, so it's been going for more than a year. And the biggest difference between that one and Nautical Campaigns was that the first one, Epic Campaigns, was basically a one-man job. I did everything for it. I wrote it, I did all of the artwork for it, I put the whole book together, I sent it to the publishing company, the printing company, and then we made sure we shipped out everything. So the Web Goblin was making sure all of the finances were in the right place and making sure that I wasn't overspending in terms of the artwork that we were doing. But effectively, that was it. Janet, very, very kindly from World Anvil, she read through the book once or twice and tried to help my crazy, crazy grammar and punctuation. But that was the extent of it. And that was a voluntary job on her behalf as well. And so that was, it really was, this is us in the raw. And Nautical Campaigns is so different. You know, we ran that Kickstarter, but even before we ran the Kickstarter, we had already said to ourselves, we're going to invest money in terms of artwork and in terms of editors and making sure that it all looks good. And once the Kickstarter was successful, we said, right, well, then there is no excuse for this book not to go through the normal production channels. And so that's what it's done. We've had developmental editors in the form of Mike Harris. We've had play testing. We've got a layout artist, Martin, who's busy working on the book's layout. He's a professional layout artist. We've got 8 or 9 artists all being paid almost $20,000 in artwork is going into this book. And so that's a huge difference. That's a mega difference between the two. The other thing is that Epic Campaigns was system agnostic, whereas Nautical Campaigns is designed for 5th edition. And the reason being is Nautical Campaigns, yes, it tells you how to run a nautical campaign regardless of what system you're using, but at the fundamental level, we had to choose a system to pin it to, and so we said, well, 5th edition. Whereas Epic Campaigns is more on the theory of script writing and storytelling and the like. So there we go. In terms of the quality of the content, you know, does the writing improve? Or I think having a developmental editor certainly has helped that, and I think having so many Kickstarter people involved reading it and going, well, what do you actually mean by this sentence, has really helped improve that as well. So there we are. Right. White Tiger 225 says, what's your view on systems that demand the GM set limits to curb its power rather than coming out balanced a certain way out of the box? Systems have a very remarkable challenge, and I can say this because I've written a couple RPG systems. I'm busy writing one at the moment, another one I should say, because you know I'm not working hard enough. Systems inherently achieve imbalance as they allow for the characters to gain power. With Nautical Campaigns, as an example, 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons is fairly well balanced by all accounts. It is fairly well balanced. And then we decided, okay, well, we're going to add some ship rules. And as we started to work through the ship rules, we realized, well, hang on a moment. Things are not equal, and the scale of things has changed, and the actual fundamental rules of 5th edition don't stand up to this scale. 5th edition was never meant to be about trading mass amounts of cargo. I mean, a ship can hold hundreds of tons worth of cargo, which has a huge financial value. Dungeons and Dragons wasn't really set up for that. And when the players go, oh, I've got 20,000 gold, what should I do? Go and buy plate mail of +2 or 3, or buy half a ship worth load of wool and ship it to the side of the world where I'll make 40,000 gold back. So it starts to get to the point where you go, okay, systems inherently destabilize over time. I think that the balance that's required of the Dungeon Master or the Game Master, first and foremost, is not necessarily on the actual rules themselves, but on the story. Not in terms of, is my story bigger and grander for the more powerful characters, but in terms of, does my story need the characters to be powerful? Does it need them to do this or that? And does the imbalance actually make a difference? Is it something that I need to consider? So, for example, if you're looking at, I'm just going back to Nautical Campaigns again, if your players are not interested in the mercantile life, if they don't want to trade, all of the trade chapters, you just ignore them. Just take them out. All of the costs, just take them out. And it's in the book. It's like, if you don't want to play a money game, take these out. If you do, here's how we would do it. Here's how we've done it. So I think that's the right approach, is that the GM is not necessarily limiting the power of the character, but is adjusting the campaign to say, well, there is this really powerful character. How do I make the world react? What's out there? That's one way of taking it, I think. Tropico Boy says, I've been wanting to email you a Word document with my D&D expansion I have been wanting to show you. You can send any emails to geekstable@gmail.com. That's geekstable@gmail.com. But I will tell you right now, Tropico Boy, I have stacks of people who have sent me material to read and look over, and in absolute honesty, and I say this not because I'm not interested, I really, really don't have a huge amount of free time on my hands to look at additional material. MJ, thank you for that donation. Mike J, really appreciate that. Thank you for that donation. I really, really, really appreciate that. So yes, you can send it through, and here's hoping that in February, when I'm in the middle of moving to the UK from Japan, I will get time to go through the backlog of stuff and have a look at. And to give you an idea, some people have sent me through books that they've written, some people have sent me through new rule systems, some people have sent me through settings and campaign settings and adventure settings, and it's absolutely amazing, the outpouring, and I am totally, totally humbled that my opinion would have any weight whatsoever in terms of the material itself. But yes, so please, you're welcome to send it through, but yes, if there's a response, there's a response. If there's no response, there isn't one. It's as easy as that. Honourable 596 says, do you know anything about the next official D&D release? I know nothing. I really wish I did, actually. You know, we've just wrapped up the Descent into Avernus game, where we were running in that wonderful, wonderful setting of Descent into Avernus. And when I first got that book, I actually looked at it and I went, well, you know, most of it's actually not set in Avernus. Most of it's set in Baldur's Gate or thereabouts, or another city itself. Why is that? And I realised that, Jason Scott, that's very kind of you. Thank you for that. I really do appreciate that. You know, so I realised that hell, Avernus, can become very dreary after a while. I'm glad that we ran our 10 sessions. So what's the next one? I don't know. We don't have a season 3 with Wizards of the Coast. They're going through a major transformation, I believe. They're also all on holiday, very well deserved. When I look at the scheduling of the execs, they're at every convention all over the world. So it's like, good grief, how on earth do they keep up with all of that work? So they'll probably be back, I would imagine, in January, and then we'll take it from there to see what comes out next. Lots of rumours abound. When I look at the success of something like Ghost of Saltmarsh, when I look at the success of Descent into Avernus, exploring traditional areas is definitely something that works for Dungeons and Dragons. Exploring specific locations like Ravnica or Eberron, not entirely sure that is something that's of huge popularity. People have kind of got their settings going, they've got their homebrew stuff going. So Ghost of Saltmarsh, Avernus, you can drop in, it doesn't matter where you are, what campaign world you're using. But when you start getting to Ravnica and Eberron, that's my opinion. I haven't looked at either of those two books, so I can't actually comment with any value other than just what I have observed. So the next one, let's see. I mean, what have they got? We've done Ravenloft with that wonderful Curse of Strahd. That was a great, great expansion book. Spelljammer? Maybe. They've got the ship combat rules from Ghost of Saltmarsh, and earlier now, as a matter of fact. We shall see. We shall see. Okay, so I see Dead Aussie Gamers in chat. Hello, Michael. Always nice to have you here. Dragon Soul 13 says, will the Nautical book start shipping in January still? Yes, we are still on deadline. I know I moan and complain about it hugely, but we are still on track. That's our goal. The PDF, to be clear, the PDF will definitely drop on January 31st or February 1st, really. I mean, it's a time zone thing. But it will be sent out to anybody and everybody who has backed the book, basically. Whether you're on Kickstarter or whether you went through our website to buy the book directly. The physical book, we are aiming to get to the publisher, to blurb.com. We're aiming to get that to them by the 31st. They then have a remarkably quick turnaround time, although we are ordering over 500 copies of that book. So that's going to take a little bit of time for them to process. Then they'll print it and they'll ship it out. But generally speaking, they've given us 3 weeks. They said it'll take them a maximum of 3 weeks to process everything. Martin, who's doing our layout, he's got a direct link to the blurb super team, they call them. That's the team handling large volume orders and things, and they're chatting and making sure that everything that we do is 100% compatible. So it really is a fairly seamless. The only delay I can see really comes from me being the bottleneck. I'm gathering the artwork, I'm issuing things to artists saying, well, please do this, please do that, we need this, we need that. But the goal is 31st of January, and I really don't see why we won't make that. I'm going on holiday from the 27th to the 2nd, but that's neither here nor there. Email follows you anywhere you are, and I'm in Japan, so it's good email. Okay, yes, a reminder there. Thanks, White Tiger 225. Please put question in front of your question, otherwise I won't see it. I won't see it. So there we are. Okay, so I see some people saying, yeah, absolutely, Spelljammer involving psionics. Will we go back there? Will I ever go back to true psionics as a separate discipline? I don't know. Aquarium Static says, what is your opinion on the insane 45th anniversary D&D Sapphire dice? Also, do you want to go halvesies on it? The Sapphire dice, it's not a planted question. If you haven't seen my video, now I don't know what are those Sapphire dice retail for? I'd be curious to know what they retail for. And 45th anniversary, to me, yeah, okay, it's 45 years is absolutely amazing. It's kind of scary. But if you haven't seen today's video, it was out of sequence because I had to launch it today because there's a competition running for Dragon Horde's dice. It's insane. $300? $300? Yeah. So the 45th edition is really cool. This edition from Dragon Horde Dice, this is sterling silver. It's the heaviest little metal dice I have ever had the pleasure of holding in my hand. It's made out of silver. It's custom polished. The numbers are incised into the actual silver itself. It's an entire set. If you want to see me gushing over this, go have a look at the Kickstarter video that dropped this morning, or dropped a little bit earlier today. This is $850 for silver, and they are releasing a 10 karat gold D20. So sapphires, diamonds, silver and gold, we can have our own hoard of treasures. I was looking at these when they sent them to me, and I'm like, this is absolutely amazing. It does belong in a safe, but it ain't gonna stay there. I reckon if a thief were to break in, they'd look at those dice and go, nah, they're just dice. What are they gonna be worth? Anyway, it's absolutely, absolutely amazing. Those silver dice, the sapphire dice. You know, I like collecting dice. I really do. I've got stone dice, I've got bone dice, I've got plastic, I've got resin, I've got metal. Now there's silver on the card. Is it gold? I don't know. The question is, how do you enter the contest for these dice? You enter the contest by watching another channel that's much better than I'm going to bring it up right now. You head on over to, I believe it's this link. I'm going to drop it in here. I think it's still running. I know it ends, if not today, then shortly. I hope that link, where does that link take us? Let's just check that I haven't sent you to some pornography website. No, there we go. Okay, lovely, good. All right, so yes, there is the competition to win one of the silver D20s. I'll show you the desktop. This is it here. You've got to like and share and retweet This is it. I mean, this is a super close-up. But you know what is also amazing about these dice, and I didn't talk about it last time, is that they have an instant antique feel. And I know it sounds weird, but when you look at these dice, they don't look as if they came out of a science fiction, precision-engineered, ultra-futuristic look. And that's perfectly fine, by the way. I've got some beautiful dice from Easy Roller Dice, which have that precise clarity of geometry. These look as if they are 300 or 400 years old. And I really like that. I really like that. I'm never going to play with them unless it's like, if I get to the UK and I get invited to tea with Her Majesty the Queen, I may very well take them along with me, because I think that would be a set that I could possibly let her play with for a little bit anyway. Maybe one roll. Maybe she can just look at them, actually. Yeah, probably just look at them. But anyway, so going into that competition, I think it ends today or tomorrow, depending on where you are in the world. But there we go. All right. I'm just looking for questions. There was, how do you enter the competition? Says Orion Faris. There we go. Price is over my budget. Absolutely. Look, I mean, there is that big question. Would you spend that much? If you had the money, for sure. Why not? Why not? So there we go. Magenta 6 says, should I try to roleplay unscrupulous character aspects eventually? No matter what, I can't seem to feel right doing mean things in character, but I don't want to be a stick in the mud. It's a very good question, and here's a confession. I usually start work at about 6:30 or 7 a.m. in the morning, depending on what time I get up, and then I will finish somewhere near 7 or 8 p.m. at night, with an hour lunch break, and usually an hour somewhere in there of playing some kind of computer game. I need a break from thinking and, doing all that kind of nonsense. So I've started to play Dragon Age Origins again. 2009 RPG. I know a lot of people lambaste it because your choices don't actually matter, and they don't really matter. It doesn't. But in that, you can choose paths of dialogue which are mean and horrific and terrible and just nasty. And I started to play this character I said, right, this character is going to be a self-absorbed bastard. And whenever the dialogue option comes up of me insulting somebody or of me telling everyone that I'm better than they are, I am going to choose that option. Again, the game is scripted so that you can't break the actual story of the game through dialogue choices. You can limit yourself, absolutely. But that's how it's designed. And you go, well, that makes sense. I mean, you don't want to, the game's over because you chose the wrong dialogue, especially since you don't know where the dialogue's going to go. Anyway, so I did this for about half an hour, and I was like, this character is such an ass. And I know that they can't die. And they're going to be an ass all the way until they finish the whole thing. I'm like, no. So I actually deleted the character. I couldn't handle it for a protracted amount of time. So, unscrupulous characters. They need to have a redeeming feature. So, what was that movie that I watched the other day? I was looking at syncing rules in nautical campaigns, and I've added a little paragraph. In the Heart of the Sea, I think it was. It was Ron Howard's movie with Chris Hemsworth in it, about the real Moby Dick story. And the movie was engaging. It felt terrible watching these people slaughter these whales. That's what they did, though. The character of the captain was an ass to begin with. Was unscrupulous and arrogant, but by the end of it, we discovered that they actually were pretty decent. Sorry, spoiler alert, but it's really not one of those films that you're going to be on the edge of your seat for, trust me. It's entertaining, but that's it. So, unscrupulous characters, derive your joy from redeeming them or from having them do redemption-like things. Don't derive your joy from being horrid and nasty, because I think that's going in the wrong direction. That was a very long answer, very, very long answer to get there. Right. Yes, Dragon Age. It is a really good series. My biggest disappointment biggest disappointment was Dragon Age 2. Because I had invested so much in Dragon Age 1, Dragon Age 2 is basically a second campaign. And the GM decided to ignore basically everything that had happened in Campaign 1 and just jump straight into Campaign 2. And yes, there's subtle links and things, but it really... It was like, well, I kind of wanted to carry on with that campaign, not with this proposed one. So, having said that, I do enjoy Dragon Age 2, and 3 also felt very much like we're done with that. It was a continuation of the world, not necessarily the campaign. So, what I absolutely adored was the progression of how the stories evolved and how the characters went much more interesting as we get deeper and deeper and deeper into the series. And what I also liked, and I wish that they had done it for Mass Effect, because Mass Effect is also a game very close to my heart. Mass Effect 4 didn't even feel as if it could stand up to Mass Effect 2, in my opinion, in terms of everything. Whereas the Dragon Age series was definitely a progression. It was always getting better. It was always improving. That's just my personal choice there. Anyway, right. Back to some questions. Peter Gilotte. Peter says, will your nautical book have whaling rules? It doesn't have whaling rules, but it does have rules on how to make titanic creatures. Word choice very specific there. Dungeons and Dragons goes up to, I think it's gargantuan, which is anything over 20 foot in length. That is not very big, in my humble opinion. So it was like, we're just gonna push it further. So titanic creatures are creatures that have multiple areas of hit points, multiple armor classes across the lengths of their bodies. And so if you look at a whale, unfortunately, whaling, the mechanics of whaling is horrific. The harpoons were designed with very specific intents and very specific purposes. And effectively, most whales died from exhaustion and blood loss more than anything else. So the idea of having specific mechanics on it, I don't think we needed it. There are rules, though, that if you want to have the great white whale that can absorb ships worth of damage, it's in there. And I think it's quite a lot of fun. Players, especially when they sort of fire off 5 ballista on their ship and do 90 damage to the creature, and you go, yep, it doesn't look as if it's damaged. It continues to charge your ship. When the players go, we need a bigger boat, you've got it right. Scorchcaller says, more of just interested to hear your perspective. How would you approach the following theme in a game without taking away player agency? Good cannot always triumph over evil. However, evil will always bring its own demise. If your players are not good to begin with, already you've solved your problem. If I just look at Descent into Avernus, not a lot of the players would be classified as good players. Well, they're good players, but their characters would not be good. Did evil triumph? I kind of think that it did in Descent into Avernus to a large degree. It was definitely a middle series, I felt. If we could do a 3rd season, I feel like that would be a great culmination. We're bringing together Ghosts of Saltmarsh, we're bringing together the evil that Descent into Avernus has now released upon the world, and then we're kind of having this grand closure. So, yeah, I would just be very cautious that if it's a campaign and the evil guys win regardless of what the good guys do, if the players are the good guys, then you've taken away agency and you're writing a book. If the bad guys are so powerful and are so near to victory, you kind of need to give the good guys an opportunity to succeed in one way or another. That's not saying good and evil and good is better or stronger than evil, etc., etc. That's more just a case of saying, well, it doesn't matter what you are, you should be able to win. You should be able to triumph. Sorry, I'm getting awfully hot in this jacket. I'm just going to undo this part. But yes, so I would be cautious about railroading that kind of conclusion. Honorable 596 says, you think WotC will put out any kind of Far East themed source book? Well, they have done that. Eastern Campaigns. I played 2nd edition version. I played 3.5 edition version. Will they do it? I don't know. They have all the other planes to explore. Avernus has proved that Hell is of interest. Maybe. They've got the material for it. I mean, the Dragon Clan and the Mantis Clan and all that kind of stuff is definitely there. We'll see. I do like the fact that we don't know. Or at least I don't know anyway. Other systems. Well, Timeless, let me show you, as a matter of fact. So I was thinking the other day, just as one does, wandering around Tokyo somewhere, figuring out mechanics or pictures or whatever it is of the book. And I got into my head, I said, well, I like the systems that are out there, there's no doubt about it. But this coming Saturday, I am playing my first role-playing game with a non-native English speaker from Japan. Now, you have to realize how rare this is. The Japanese role-playing community is huge. They're very strong and they're very good role-players in Japanese. To role-play in English for someone from Japan who's more of the normal Japanese approach is very, 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 very rare. And I've only ever had the opportunity to play with one other Japanese native speaker who was very good and was very entertaining and very enjoyable and brought a nice different take on role-playing. So this Saturday, I've got this wonderful person who's going to be joining us. And I mean, the rules are so complicated. In almost all of the systems, there are some simple ones. How could I do a simpler system? So this is what I've started. You say, how do you start? You start. So I've called it the try system. You can try anything you like, but also there's 3 components: physical, mental, and spiritual. And then I just start listing stuff. It's like, here are all the skills. Well, it's only the 4 combat skills and acrobatics, and I've still got to populate the list. This is some of the mechanics, difficulty numbers. Again, I've only got up to 10 out of a possible, 50. I haven't even finished that part yet. Healing, health, and death. How are those handled? And that's it. It's only 2 pages long at the moment, 400 words, give or take. But that's how I start. I'm like, I need to figure out a system that's going to work and that's going to be easy. Is that system going to be easy? I don't know. But I wanted it to be a case of you've got 3 values that are your health and your bonus to roll or whatever it is, and then you go from there. So that was my goal. My goal was to say, okay, well, how do we make it as simple as possible? Without taking away some of the fun, without taking away some of those magical things that players like to do, which is level up and design characters that are unique. All those things need to be there. Okay, aquatic static, aquarium static says, what is your favorite D&D race to play with, and why isn't it the GIF? The GIF. I don't know who the GIF are. The GIF. Just tell me about the GIF. I've never heard of the GIF in terms of a D&D race. My favorite D&D race... I think my favorite D&D race... As written by Dungeons and Dragons, my favorite race would probably be... That's a tough one. That's a tough one. Oh, the GIF of the hippo people. No, I'm not a big fan of the hippo people. Probably the drow. I like the drow, but not a huge amount of like for the drow as they're written in the 5th edition book. So I don't know. There we are. I like the drow because they have a promise of a whole bunch of things, and they bring in this wonderful element of we think of elves as light, but here's some dark. And I think I like the idea more about the opposition than anything else. The opposite. So you have high elves and you have the drow. I like that kind of split. So I think it kind of works quite well. Yeah. So there we are. Right, hippo people. Yes, there we go. Giant hippos dressed like Colonel Mustard. I like that. I like that. Okay, next question. Tropico Boy says, I have a problem with my D&D group. I did not ask them before a new player joined. Uh-oh. And they are trying to kill his character and trying to kill his character. Are they toxic? Oh, you're not alone, Tropico Boy. You are not alone. So, let's unpack. Firstly, why didn't you tell them that someone new was going to join? A lot of players need time to process this. Role-playing for some people is an incredibly personal experience. We might not see it. They arrive every Saturday or Tuesday or whenever it is that you play, and everything seems to be absolutely fine. However, when you introduce someone new into that space, I don't want to make it akin to introducing a third member into your relationship, but it can sometimes be a very intrusive space. They also like to get to know the person first as well. Role-playing, let's put it this way, if it's an established group, it can be very difficult. If it's just, we're meeting on Saturday, we might play some D&D, and there's 12 people there that you don't know, that's fine, that's a different story. But if it's the same people every week, sometimes it can be too much. Point number one. Point number two is it also depends on how you introduce the character. I have, in my many years, and I'm sure many other people have as well, made the mistake of saying, oh, you see a mysterious character standing at the far end of the forest, or is trapped in the dungeon with you, or is wandering the streets. And the players respond by saying, well, they're out of place, they shouldn't be here, they're obviously the enemy, we're going to kill them. It's perfectly justifiable, and yes, they will respond in kind. Suddenly you've got this catastrophe. So let people know that someone's joining. Once they do, then you don't have to strong arm them, but there needs to be that agreement that yes, okay, someone's joining, we're going to metagame letting them into our space even though we probably wouldn't normally, and we'll figure out a way of doing that that's narratively satisfying. That's the bottom line. Dragon Souls 13 says, if you have a season 3 and go with the tie-in... there goes a question. And go in with the tie-in of Saltmarsh and Descent into Avernus, would you allow the players to play each of their characters from both storylines? It's a very good question. In the post-game interviews that we did, it became fairly apparent thieves, thugs, and murderers, basically. That was the whole point of the campaign. So it makes sense that they're far more interested in the characters that are actually good, which is nice. So there is definitely that. There is definitely that component to it. Would I allow them to play both sides of it? If I had more than 12 episodes, yes. But if I only have 12 episodes like I did before, then the answer would be no. There's just not enough time. But what I would do then is I would almost bounce between the two parties. One session is Saltmarsh, one session is the demons and devils from Avernus. I would maybe look at it that way. Jason Scott says, speaking of your titanic creatures, give a couple of examples of how you would construct the mini events to take down this landscape-sized monster. It needs to be, because it's titanic, bearing in mind that these are monsters that the party is only likely to face when they are aboard a ship. If they come across these monsters when they are individual, the monster will, under most circumstances, not even care. When you are a mouse and you are walking up to a giraffe, it doesn't even notice that you're there. If said mouse suddenly electrocuted the giraffe would become very aware of the mouse, but probably wouldn't be able to actually hit them because they're so small. So that's point number one. Point number two is that ships do a lot of damage. I mean, a battleship is firing, off the top of my head, I think it's 6 ballista, 4 mangonels, Each mangonel is doing 5d10 damage, so you've got 20d10 damage in a single round just from the mangonels. The ballistas can fire as well. That's 3 damage each. So you've got this, almost 40d10 damage each round. On average, you're doing a lot of damage. 200 hit points worth of damage in a single round from a battleship, assuming those hits actually land, of course. So the way to build it up is these ships are doing huge amounts of damage. And they're going to hit the fins. They're going to hit the side. They're going to hit the main body of the beast. They're going to hit its tail. It's going to be lashing back, doing tremendous amounts of damage as well. I think it's 4 times the listed damage in the actual book. So you take a basic monster and you make it titanic by multiplying it by twice or 3 times or 4 times, and then you adding hit points all over the place that are independent from its main hit point value. So yes, build it up as you would, say, for example, the Jaws film series, where the players see it sinking a ship. If you watch Ghost of Saltmarsh, that's all that I did, was that entire series. The 12 episodes was about the gigantic Kraken. And in that, they saw this thing throwing ships around, and they never engaged it in a ship versus monster battle. They didn't need to. They actually had to climb onto this creature, and it didn't care that they were there. It never attacked them once. It attacked their ship because the ship was big enough to take note of. So yeah, it's definitely something to consider. I would suggest is when you're setting up these monsters, they should be the focus of a mini campaign within your bigger campaign. These are beasts that would eat dragons for lunch. So we build aquatic dragons using the system, and it's like, wow, what flies around in the sky is teeny tiny in comparison to what's in the ocean. And for me, I don't have a problem with that. When you look at the beasts that roamed Earth versus the ones that swim in the oceans are always bigger. It's easier. The Thought Police says, how would you go about accurately modeling a republic in a game world? Well, my drow in my world are always a republic. They are a Roman republic. They have 2 praetors. They have a senate. This is now a traditional Roman republic. Modern day republic with the president and the senate and that kind of thing. You can certainly have it, but unless you're playing a political game, I wouldn't worry about it too much. I would look at it as something in the background. Again, though, I would quite literally just go to Wikipedia and say, how does a republic work? And then populate it. The important thing to bear in mind is that usually when we look at stories that involve republics or any kind of political organization, like The Blacklist, for example, a series with James Spader in it, it's easy to invent secret organizations that can run around in the background and do things that wouldn't necessarily or normally be done by normal government agencies, or the ones that just don't exist in real life, for example. But yes, a republic, I would always look at it and say, well, what's the purpose of it being a republic? How does it operate? Does it have, is it a Roman republic where it's multiple leaders and senate type stuff? Is it more of a modern day republic where we have a president and a senate who will ratify things and send those to the president to finally draft into play? How does that work? But importantly, how and why is that going to influence the story that the character's on? I would have a look at that as your source of inspiration. Next question. Looking for question. Vitalius Motikas says, how is your last New Year resolution going? What the hell was my New Year's resolution last year? I don't even remember. I do know that I have been doing the challenge that I set forward, and as far as I know it, this Saturday will bring it to a conclusion. So I released a video where I challenged GMs out there to achieve a certain number of goals. And players as well, for that matter. I've got that list. I can bring it up and we can go through it if you like. If you haven't been aware of it, you've got 20 odd days. Oh, what am I saying? You've got 10 odd days, give or take, to finish it. There's no reason why you can't. But yes, it's easier for me than for someone who isn't running a YouTube channel, because I get to enact these things as a day job. But yes, so let me open that up. Where is it now? Oh yes, I know where it is. It's on Discord. Lots of people have been doing this, and I did notice that a lot of people have succeeded in doing it as well, which is also very exciting. So let's go and have a quick look as I log into Discord. And where are we? We are looking for the challenge. There we go. So I'm going to share the desktop with you so you can have a look at the challenges. All these different people have signed up. Nice new dice there, D100. I remember when the first D100 came out, it was 1997, I think it was. Supposedly it was indestructible. Yeah, so these are all the people who have been completing these challenges. I think it's pinned as to the actual challenge. Here we go. So it's a major new race, introduce a major new race, or use a major new race in your campaign. Introduce or create a new world, run a new campaign, play a new RPG system, introduce a new player to the game, and get a new set of dice. I think this one was the one that most people completed in the blink of an eye. New players, sometimes tricky. They can't have played before. That was part of that major rule. New role-playing system. Always good to try out new things. New campaign, well, of course, that's what should be done. New world map, well, so many tools out there. The owner of one of those tools, you can see, has sent me a message. And a new major race. Try a different race. So instead of playing orcs as your main protagonist, swap it up and play GIF. There we go. So you can do that, or Gith, as this person has done. So yeah, that's where we are. I think that was the GM one. I don't know. Okay, so that's the GM one. That's the GM one. I think I put the player one in here as well. It was pretty much the same thing, just play a different gender, play a different... anyway, it's all there. You can go and have a look at it. And if you have completed that, jump onto Discord and share it with us. Discord.gg/greatgm. That's discord.gg/greatgm. And you will see the challenge 2019 has been added, and you can follow through on that. Handsome Aaron says, what do you do if your party has a plan to handle a problem that they think is smart or clever, but you can see from your more detached position that it makes no sense and shouldn't work? You have two options as far as I am concerned. There's always more, of course, but you have two on the surface. One is to let it fail. Let them realize that they've made a mistake. Are your players tenacious? Are they enthusiastic about failure? Are they the type that if they have a failure will bounce back and try again? Or are they fairly morose individuals? When they fail, they'll just give up on that quest and go and try something else? If they are the latter, if they would just give up and they go, oh, we failed, oh, it's done, whatever, then your second option is the one that you need to then enact, which is to introduce an NPC who comes in and says, oh, is that your plan? Are you sure? You haven't thought about that. Oh, what about that? You realize they're all armed with automatic crossbows and they can fire 30 shots in a round. How are you going to compensate? Introduce an NPC who can guide them, who can not give them solutions. Don't say, oh, well, you should go around there because they're not guarding that. You should go there because they're not guarding. No, don't do that. Introduce someone who questions it. Oh, have you thought about it? If their answer is yes, we've thought about it, go away, you strange person. And obviously you've got to introduce them from a narratively intelligent way. But if that's what if they don't respond to that, let them fail. Or get caught and then follow the story as it goes from there. The failure should lead to more story. It shouldn't lead to a dead end, I suppose, is the bottom line. And so there we are. Major Stealth, I called out the name, I'm going to go find it. Major Stealth says, what would you say is the best way to implement another video game into your campaign? I've done a video on that, actually. I've done a video on that. Heaven help me in terms of what the name is. but I did a video where you were converting things from one to the other. And I have in the podcast series, an entire series where we convert a movie into an adventure. So when it comes to converting video games or including video games into your setting, make sure that the video game that you're incorporating A, fits, but B, doesn't overshadow what's currently been established and doesn't suddenly introduce the thing that the players go, what do you mean they can fly? Why couldn't we fly? If I'd known my character could fly, I would have chosen to fly. So introduce stuff that is consistent with what the players have already been going through is a very, very important thing. So definitely bear that in mind. If you are new to the stream, we've had some new people joining us. We're just bringing the first hour to a close. We've got 1 hour left of the live stream. I usually go for 2 hours. So 1 hour left. If you are new to the stream, please put the word question in caps lock in front of your question so that I can see it. We're answering questions at the moment. Once again, we will do creative writing, I would say probably in 15 minutes or so, and take it from there. Landon then asked the question, I recently had my party realize that someone or something is stealing children all around the world slowly. They have brought into finding it out. Okay, so they bought into finding it out, right. Any suggestions for increasing the tension? Well, the children are going missing. All right, fine. Tension could be, this is just off the top of my head, tension could be that a vigilante group of parents have formed and are now running their own witch hunt to find out who is taking the children. The PCs, by virtue of the fact that you've said that they have bought into the idea of trying to track it down, the PCs become the target of this vigilante group. So now they're being hunted by this bunch of maniacs whom just happen to be quite powerful in terms of their character level or strength. So you could do that. So you have this vigilante group trying to hunt them down. We know you've taken the children and are just pretending to be investigating. There's that option. The other option could be that they start to discover that the government or the kingdom or whoever's in charge knows who's taken them and has an agent who is operating trying to hide or cover up any clues as to why they have been taken, to prevent people from finding out. The kingdom, for whatever reason, has decided that it is best that there is no understanding as to what's happening to these kids, other than that there is a conclusion. You could do it that way to add in more tension. You could have some of the children coming back, but they're coming back different. That's always super freaky and works quite well. So yeah, definitely some options to explore there. Serpent's Embrace 2 says, I've been running sessions for my family. That's wonderful. And due to our very unpredictable... I would suggest, when you have limited time, have very specific outcomes that you want to achieve and have fun outcomes that you want to achieve. So I look at the streams that I was doing for D&D. That was a very limited time, 2-hour blocks. I've never roleplayed for only 2 hours at a time. It's tough. I mean, Windswift, we were doing 1 hour at a time. That was just insane. Oh, Adrian, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. So 2 hours is quite short, but every session I said, okay, I want them to have fun. I want this to be the outcome of the session, so that regardless of whether they take 2 hours, 10 minutes, or 40 hours to do it, they get a satisfactory outcome per session, which leaves a hook to get them into the next one. And my most down moments, when I would end a stream and I'd talk to the players and I'd be like, oh, that sucked. And they'd go, why? And I'm like, because what I wanted to achieve didn't happen, because I wasn't fast enough to set up the situation to allow you to get to the point that I wanted you to get to. Or there wasn't a cliffhanger to end. For me, that was when it felt unsatisfactory. The players thoroughly enjoyed it, and they were having character stories and all that kind of stuff. So that's wonderful. But yes, that's how I would do it. Andrew Lockwood says, if someone introduces a new book which has a new race, class, or whatever, would you allow it? Andrew, it's tough, and with the plethora of material that is constantly being generated, and I'm guilty of doing that myself, where there's new classes, not classes, races. It's always about, if it's before the campaign starts, I will read it, I will carefully consider it, I will try my damnedest, though I usually fail, to anticipate what that class, race, whatever ramifications are for future games, because there could be some big ramifications for future games and for future levels, I suppose, where there's a power creep. I try to take all that into account. I ask the player why do they want to do it. If their answer is because they're powerful, my immediate response is, well, then no, you can't play it. If it's because, oh, I think it's a really cool idea to explore a new race or to try this new class out because I think the class will fit my playing style, etc. Brilliant. Brilliant. Okay, that's fine. Let's include it. If it gets too powerful, we're going to talk about it. We're going to nerf it as it goes along if necessary. So, yeah, I would allow it. But again, I would allow it if it comes from an official source. If it's, well, a friend of mine wrote this and I found it online and, I basically added some stuff because I thought it wasn't strong enough. Really? I don't know. So I'm always very cautious of that. Chris Dial says, what, in your opinion, is the most important, insightful book for GMs to read? I'm not going to say my own book, because my own book is not, it doesn't cover all of the aspects. It covers one aspect, because I think that's the most important answer, is that there isn't one book. My first book, A Complete Guide to Epic Campaigns, is about story structure, narrative structure, timing your sessions based on the story. So if you are a new GM or a new DM and you read that book, you'll know how to tell a good story, but you won't have a clue on adjudicating rules in terms of a specific system. The Dungeon Master's Guide for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons is a very good book to read, but again, you have to have done it beforehand in order for it to make absolute sense. I think that's the important thing. So the most influential book I ever read is Gary Gygax's book called Master of the Game, which I had a physical copy of. I lost the physical copy because I lent it to someone. But for me, that was definitely an eye-opener. And again, it has nothing to do with the rules. It was more on the philosophy of being a GM than anything else. So there we are. Next question. Have a cuppa on me. Absolutely. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much. This is like a hot chocolatey thing powder that you get. No, it's actually quite nice. Okay. Let's see. Where are we? Looking for questions. Dragon Soul 13. In the last episode of Saltmarsh, when it came to the emotional play of the story and the emotional effect on the players, was this something you planned, or was it in the reaction of the players? I had nothing to do with how Lahuna and Flick were going to play out. Now, for those of you that haven't seen that, the players were in tears because their characters were self-sacrificing and counter-self-sacrificing and counter-self-sacrificing, and so there was a huge emotional ball of character play. In my head, I had done an action movie where there was death and destruction and tentacles and undead, and it was just this mega finale. And if you watch how I set it up, that's exactly what I set it up for. The players brought, and this is again something that's very important to realize, is the players, it's their story. So when they started to talk about sacrifice and they started to talk about tell my mother I love her, they didn't say that, they were much better than I was. that's when you as the GM, you go, whoa, step back, give them the space. Give them the space. And I could see that they wanted to do a sacrifice of self in one way or another. I'm not going to spoil how it ended, but I could see that that's what they were wanting to do. So I started to go, okay, well, how do I help them tell that story better? Give them opportunities to enact what they're saying. And that for me is one of the fundamentals of GMing. Listen to what your players are saying and give it to them. Maybe they're not aware that you're doing that way. Maybe they think that it was always supposed to be that way. But that to me is one of my greatest achievements, is when my players are going, oh, I wish we had a rocket-propelled grenade. And you go, a goblin holding a barrel of fire oil fired from a catapult is pretty much like a rocket-propelled grenade. And there's a shed they haven't explored, which may contain said so it's about building up that space so that players can then do what they said that they were hoping to do. And that's exactly what I did, was I said, okay, well, then we're going to make the thing start to rip apart and collapse and get rid of the monsters which are going to take away from that moment, because they're going to engage in combat, which is boring. In that instance, the roleplay was more important. So that's what I did. I hope that answers your question. White Tiger 225 says, what is the weirdest things your players have ever done? In my case, they spent years in game making a deal with the Earth plane to build an adamantium colossus to fight a Tarrasque or a kaiju. Surely you must have an amazing story. What is the most weirdest thing your players have ever done? There's only one example that comes to mind in terms of the weirdest non-roleplay thing, I think. I got two. Okay, so there's two. There's two things. No, there's more. Two that come to mind. The first one, I was running a one-on-one game, and it was a Star Wars game, and the player was playing a Jedi. Consequences, choices, crash landings. That game revolved around this Jedi becoming a pig farmer. And we role-played many sessions where they were looking after their pigs in a pig farm. They had to capture the pigs. They had to figure out how to feed the pigs. They had to maintain the fences for the pigs. It was the most mundane of actions that a Jedi could possibly be involved in. But that's what we were role-playing. That's what we were role-playing. And it was delightful. It was wonderful. Lots of fun. So that was really weird. And it will stick with me forever. Here is a Jedi, and we are rolling... when was this? This was decades ago. So I want to say it was the Star Wars D20 system that came out in the early 2000s. It might have been the D6 system, which is even earlier. But that's it. We were rolling. Okay, well, you want to build a stone wall? Right. Well, give me a strength check or whatever to see how much of the stone wall you can build per day. And are you running out of food yet? And how are you going to trap the pigs? And so yeah, that's what we did. That's what we did. Now, that was the first instance. The second instance was where, and this was a little bit of I don't want to say it was a mistake on my behalf, but it was not an intended consequence. The one player their character was a priestess, or a priest, I forget, of Nur. Nur is a god in my setting that is responsible for life. And they had done many things, and they got to a high level where they had become the avatar of Nur. And they became the avatar of Nur by finding Nur's mace. Now, the mace was the symbol of Nur, and they had found this mace. The consequence of this mace, because Nur is the goddess of life, anybody hit by this mace would become pregnant. Females only, unfortunately, but that was the consequence. In the case of males, I think they were given over to effectively wanting to protect and impregnate the very next female that they saw. But, as luck would have it, our player has this incredibly powerful weapon, mace. It does lots of damage. It causes things to become pregnant and calm down and have a nice glow about them. The traveling companion was this rather dark and evil person, the character, female character, and she was currently possessed by a demon and a vampire spirit at the same time. This was a long campaign. Things had got complicated. It doesn't sound now, when I'm speaking about it, to be a very fun campaign or a logical one, but that's what had happened. They had voluntarily imbibed a vampiric spirit to keep the vampire alive. They'd made a pact with the vampire clans, and then they picked up a cursed weapon that had the soul of a demon in it, and the soul snuck into them when they weren't looking. Their characters got into an argument, and this priestess of Nur with the mace, declared, I hit so-and-so, the demon vampire possessed individual. And we went, what? No, I hit them with the mace. Okay. You know the consequences of this. I don't care. I hit them with the mace because my character is furious and the mace is in their hand and they're going to hit them with the mace. Okay, so they got hit with the mace. There was a constitution saving throw to avoid pregnancy. Of course, the character failed. And so for the rest of the campaign, this child, this half-demon, half-vampire child born to, I think the character was a human, was born. The birth was amazing. So for several months the character was pregnant and had contemplated trying to remove the child. They'd gone to some priest or other who'd discovered that there was not one umbilical cord but multiple, and some of them looked like tendrils rather than anything else. The inner vampire started to cause this character to want to eat blood. Then the demon caused him to become a lot more evil. So they went on this amazing journey, and they found themselves in a temple to a god of indulgence and evil as the birth started. And so they rushed. They said, the character said, I will not give birth to my demon vampire baby in a temple to indulgence. This is just insane. This thing will devour the world, and that will be it. We will be done. So they decided, they were lost in this temple, by the way. They didn't know how they got in. They fell in through a hole in the roof, and they were trying to get out. So the whole adventure was them rushing, basically, through every trap and encounter and combat that I had set up to try and get out of this temple before they gave birth. And I had to come up with roles. It's like, all right, well, we're not going into contractions, but give me a constitution saving throw. You pass. All right, fine. Roll a d10. That's how many rounds it takes, and then the baby's coming. And that's as far as we're gonna go on that, because pregnancy, right? So they're racing, they're rushing. They get to within, I think it's 10 feet of the exit, and the check has failed, and so the child starts coming. So the druid transforms into a gorilla, because that's what they do, picks up this mother in labor, and throws her out of the temple. The extra 10 feet, because she couldn't move. She moved a maximum distance already for that round. So that when she lands, she gives birth. I mean, it was insane. It was nuts. And of course, then the child comes out, and it is this half demon, half vampire babe. And it has some absolutely insane abilities, because I wanted them to realize that they had given birth to the next great nemesis of this world. And they bizarrely accepted it. They just bizarrely, the child would wave its hand and be able to suck the life out of anyone who failed a constitution saving throw. And that was how it nourished itself. It was like, this is what a demon/vampire would be able to do. And it aged incredibly quickly. And instead of okay, not killing the child, I can understand that. Not killing the baby. But after about 2 months of role-playing, this thing was 16 years old and was difficult and angsty and just would kill people because they got frustrated. They figured out that they could just cast healing spells onto the child to provide it with a temporary nourishment and things. But eventually the mother, she took her son out into the great wilds and said, there you go, you're on your own. And literally released the giant evil into the world. It was amazing. It was absolutely crazy. So there we go. Yes, right. So that was bizarre. Sorry about waxing on about that. We're going to do critical writing shortly. Creative writing, where you have critical thinking happening. See, my brain's now back on that campaign. I'm like, really should pick up on that story, actually, because we didn't. They were busy fighting dragons and things at the same time, and they finished that story, and then I moved to Japan, so we couldn't ever go back to it. But, well, there you are. That's sometimes how you get your giant nemesis, have your player give birth to it. Back to questions. We'll do creative writing in 4 minutes. Where are we? Christyle says, as a GM, have you ever felt not up for GMing and not sure of your abilities as a GM? How do you come to grips with that, and how do you move forward? Not every session, but most sessions, I feel like that. I go, I wish I had more time. I wish I could have done this better. I wish I could have done that better. Maybe I could have, maybe I should. How do I fix this? Every time I go live on stream, I feel that fear of, okay, this is the one where it's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. I'm ill prepared. I'm unplanned. Or I sit there going, I've got a session coming up on Saturday. What am I going to do? I haven't started planning for it yet. I haven't started preparing for it yet. I haven't done this. I haven't done that. We all feel it. I feel it perhaps more so because I'm like, I run a YouTube channel where I'm supposedly telling you how to be great at this thing. I need to make sure every single thing I release is great. And then you go, you know what? But by whose definition? The game itself is open to interpretation. What one player finds absolutely boring, another would find mind-blowingly amazing. And that's what I've realized. So as long as you relax and go, oh, we're just here to fun. We're here to have fun. We're here to play. And so what if the character's giving birth in the middle of a temple of evil? We'll just roll with it. We'll just have fun. So that is what calms me down before a session or after a session when I'm going through those motions of terror. It's just to remember we're having fun. And sometimes I have had sessions, not often, but where everyone sits back from the table and goes, we shouldn't have played today. Not because it was terrible, but because it was dark or it was sluggish. These things happen. These things happen. They really do happen. And we just have to be okay with that. And yes, there are times where I've been booked to GM with the, not booked as in commercially, but booked to it's my job. And you go, not today. Today it's board games. We're doing board games today. And there's nothing wrong with that either. The Thought Police says, how do you handle the philosophical question of free will versus fate in your games? I handle it the same way that I handle real life philosophy, not to get too controversial, but I believe that you yourself are responsible for forging the path that you are on. So when I look at a player character, the player character is forging a path that they're on. Yes, I've got things set up, and there are definitely deities who want to make plans with the little lives of mortals. I have all of that in game. But ultimately, the player's decisions, the player's choices, the player's words actually impact the outcome. If I have a villain and the villain is there wanting to destroy the world and the player decides they're going to join them, okay, that's fine. Let's join them. Is it their fate? Well, not at that particular moment. They're just joining them. Was it predestined? No. How did they get there? By choices. The choices they made got them there. And as a result, is that then fate? You've made a decision which has caused a whole bunch of things to happen, so you are now fated. Or is it free will? I don't know. It's in that same space, isn't it? But that's a really philosophical question in terms of that. Player agency is, for me, of paramount importance as long as the players acknowledge that their agency may be tempered in a certain direction. And I will leave it at that. Catherine Bischoff says, have your players loved a one-shot so much that they kept pestering you to return to it until you did? It is very unusual for me to be bullied into playing a game that I don't want to play. Having said that, if I look at some of the one-shots that I have run, players love playing in games that I run. I'm very grateful for that. I'm very lucky that that happens to a large degree. I do put in a lot of work to make sure that it happens. But yes, I'm trying to think. Usually one-shots are tragic endings, at least certainly in my world, in my kind of games and things. So I can't think off the top of my head of that happening. I do know that I went through, when I first moved to the major city in 2010, it was a new role-playing group that we assembled, and we couldn't get past the one-shots. We would try to run campaigns, and they'd last for maybe 1 or 2 sessions, and then we'd go, nah, let's try something else. Nah, let's try something else. And we couldn't work out why for many years as to why. We were all good role players. We'd all run campaigns before. We couldn't get something to stick. So I've had the opposite problem. I have had the opposite problem. What are we doing for? Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So hold your questions for now. I love the fact that there's still questions coming through. It's really, really, really awesome. Game Master's Vault. So nice to see you here. Game Master's Vault, everybody. He is a wonderful human being and an amazing developmental editor. He is the editor from A Complete Guide to Nautical Campaigns and a good friend of mine. And currently has a pair of my pants, which I'll have to get from you at some point when I'm back in the USA. But anyway, yes. And right, hold your questions for now. Let us do some creative writing. Creative writing, for those of you that are new to the channel, to the particular episode anyway, creative writing is where I posit something to you. I give you an idea, I give you a question, I give you a challenge, some notion or other, and then you are tasked to think about it for a little bit and then to write your response into the chat of your choice. So whether it's into Twitch or into YouTube, type it in there. You have a limited number of characters, so make sure that you don't fall into that space. But definitely do that. And Landon, I want you to ask your question again once we are done with the creative writing, please, because it's a very good question. I think Game Master's Vault is desperate to prove that it's not that the pants are under the bed. No, it's definitely an order that I put through and haven't yet collected. So there we go. Right. Today's creative writing, as far as I'm concerned, it's definitely inspired by some of the questions that have come through. I want you to think about the most mundane situation you can, absolutely mundane, filing a report on a city council flat meeting of stakeholders, and there are 4 of them. And in that report, nothing was added. Everything was done as it had been planned to do. In other words, it was an absolutely routine report. So something as mundane as that, as mundane as possible, as boring as possible. So list that first. So give us the situation. And then I want you to tell us what plot hook you can pull out of that. So that absolutely boring report, that absolutely dull meeting, the tea that was served at that meeting contained vast amounts of poison. And now all 4 stakeholders are dead. Why? So give me the plot hook from a mundane situation, because oftentimes we try to find these adventures, we try to come up with adventures that are big and spectacular and absolutely mind-blowingly amazing, and we forget to just go, she was making a cup of coffee. What's exciting about that? Figure it out. The teaspoon she used absorbed into her skin, and now she's made out of 925 sterling silver. I don't know. So think about it. So in your paragraph, you're going to write the situation, the mundane situation, and then you're going to put your hook into it. Give us a hook that you think is going to get us to want to know more. To ask the question, wow, well, that's interesting. Why did that happen? That's all you need your players to do, is ask the question, why did that happen? So think about that, put that in, drop it in. Thanks for calling my job boring. Gamer War Tanker 88. Having attended council flats meetings, sometimes, almost never, but sometimes they're exciting. Usually it's a list of people complaining about stuff. Anyway, so I chose it simply because of my own personal agonies that have transpired in the past. Choose anything that you like. So, as a good example, now remember there is no right and there is no wrong answer. There are just answers which we will then take and explore. Pseudonym says, oh, goodbye. Goodbye, Pseudonym. Absol's Story of Fiction says, I had to send a report through FedEx, but the travel is ruined with bandits, babies, and the fog storm. The bandits and the babies, okay, babies are slightly interesting. The fog storm, that's more interesting, I think, personally. The fog storm, that could be a hook. Bandits and babies, I think you're overreaching in terms of throwing out, okay, bandits with a report going through the mail is, I don't want to say it, well, it is expected. It's like, okay, the mail got stolen. All right. Babies, interesting, but I don't see an immediate causal link or threat. Perhaps if you'd said the travel is ruined by babies who ate the package, okay, still not giving me a threat. By babies that ate the delivery man. Now we've got something that the players from a hook perspective go, wait, what? The babies ate the delivery man. Okay. But like I said, the fog storm was what it's like, wait, fog is usually not part of a storm because fog exists when there's no wind. Storms usually have wind, or rain at least, and that kind of defeats the fog. So what the hell's a fog storm? And is it dangerous? So I'm just giving you an example of how one can look at this and how players might necessarily look at this. Magenta 6 says, harvesting carrots, an old artifact bone is found on the earth. As with Absol's Story of Fiction, we expect when someone's digging in the ground for them to find something. What's the hook? I need more than that. That is the beginnings of an old artifact bone is found. And the bone seems to have made the carrots become sentient. The carrots are worshipping the artifact bone. Give me the hook. That's just a fact that this was found. Does that make more sense? It was the sugar cubes that the 4 officials added to the tea that was poisoned. They were poisoned because of a recent vote. I love it. The sugar cubes. Yes, the sugar cubes. Always the sugar cubes. Okay, so what was the prompt? Yes, thank you, White Tiger 225. Give us a mundane situation, a boring situation, and then give us a plot hook. It must hook us. It mustn't just be something that happened. It must pull us in. We must want to know more. Angus Boyd says, the council has received a threat in the form of a letter during their fortnightly meeting. Unfortunately, the writer used a very rare and recognizable stationery, taken from a real-life example. Where's the hook? Yes, I understand that there's a threat. That is not pulling me in. It's like, yeah, okay, the council got a threat. The very rare and recognizable stationery begins the story, but I'm not into the story yet. I need something more. The hook needs to be something that gets me to go, what? So maybe the council has received a threat in the form of a letter during their fortnightly meeting. Unfortunately, the writer used a very rare. Okay, so that's a piece of fact. That's for later. What makes this threat out of the mundane? The letter was written in crayon, or even that is still not enough, I think, to push the characters to want to know more. Unless they're playing detectives, of course. I mean, that's a different story. So again, it's about saying, this is the situation. What makes it interesting? And not just from something that happened. Something happened and will possibly cause more. That, I think, perhaps is another way to look at it. Magentra6 says, I never expect to find runic bones when I garden. You haven't gardened in the right places then, I have to say. I love gardening when you're digging up stuff and you're like, oh, look, a used earbud. Wow, that's brilliant. It's mundane, but why would someone throw their earbud here? What caused them to be standing here? Maybe they were standing and the earbud was the last thing they used before they were shot. There's a hook. All right. Dragon Soul 13. Everyone who goes to a certain outhouse disappears and their intact skin shows up in fields as scarecrows. There's a hook. There's a hook. And why is that a hook? Because there's a threat. There is a mundane activity. Go to the outhouse, the thunderbox, as some would call it. They disappear and their skin shows up as scarecrows. It means that there is an active force that is going to be potentially threatening anybody who's around there. And it's different enough that you go, okay, they disappear. If you had just stopped at they disappear, there isn't so much of a hook. Oh, they're disappearing. Okay, yeah, all right, we'll go and investigate. The fact that they show up later, or their skin shows up later, as an object, means that there is a whole lot more to this. So my curiosity is piqued. Terranatum says, weeding a garden with no problems, like slugs. Raindrops start to fall, turning into giant radishes, and they start to dance so hard the earth begins to raise the garden. Raindrops start to fall, turning into giant radishes. The garden turns into giant radishes. There's no threat. The earth starts to rise, sure. To landslide proportions? Are all of the things turning into... So it's interesting, but is it a hook? hooks are very difficult, and I think a lot of people get very frustrated when they are writing hooks, or when they're trying to come up with hooks, that people go, it's not very interesting. Well, yes. So what is it? What is it? Landon, an old man lighting the lamps in the street. The road behind him collapses, and he dives in. Okay. It's the start of a hook. So he's lighting the lamps, gas lamps or whale oil lamps, I discovered. Starts to light these lamps. And the next minute, the road behind him collapses. And he doesn't fall in. He dives in. There's no threat yet. There's no hint of some kind of immediate danger moving forward. There's a hole in the road. It's an interesting beginning. But where's the threat? He dives in, and then all the lights go out. Why do the lights go out? Because he dives in. What's the link? Maybe that could drive it forward. I mean, this is just stuff off the top of my head. Everyone, these are great, great examples. And yes, I'm taking them apart specifically to show you that hooks are tricky, but can also be incredibly simple, which is so frustrating. So frustrating. Right. We're going to do this for another 4 minutes, and then we're going to go back to questions. The Thought Police. He had been waiting at the DPS all day. Wait in a long line to renew his driver's license, but it was closing soon. With news of a blizzard on the way, a phone out of battery, he needs to head home. Okay, where's the hook? Where's the hook? Now, I was at a wedding recently of the Web Goblin, as a matter of fact, and my phone battery died. The charger that I brought with me, the cable was damaged, so it couldn't actually charge. I was in the middle of Africa. Had to drive home at night. I'm not a very good night driver. Didn't know where the hell I was. And it took me nearly 3 hours to get home. Taking me on a giant circuitous route. I'd stop at a petrol station that were very few and far between and ask for directions and things. But there's no hook. There's no hook. So news of the blizzard on the way. Some pending danger, but there's nothing he can do about it. So that's the other thing, is that hooks need to give us the opportunity to intervene or to change before something happens. I'm just going to look at it, just grab another one. Had Nafane says, a carpool has been standing seemingly forgotten on a side street in London. Okay. Japan, there are cars that literally have foliage growing over them because the users do not need to drive them. After a week, as inspectors check it out, it kicks into gear within seconds, driving at 100 kilometers per hour through the alleyway. No driver was spotted. The car is still accelerating. Okay, there's an interesting riddle. Why did the car start on its own? Where is it going? Does it need to stop? Does it not need to stop? Who needs to stop it? So yes, if the players were playing the inspectors, if that was their characters, and the car suddenly pulled away and started accelerating, sure. I would add that the car is still accelerating, and any pedestrians it targets and hits. Now there's more of a threat. There's a definite threat that's going on in there. Just a little tweak, just to make people go, oh, we got to stop this car. Think about it for a little bit. All right, last one, and then we're done. We're done. These have been really good, and I think you're starting to see that the hook needs to promise a few things. Threat of impending action is going to happen if the player or the character doesn't take action. Something has happened and there isn't an immediate situation or solution for it. Jason Scott says, after drinking half of your tea, the bottom of your cup bears a single letter G. You notice Judy next to you pondering over her half-tilted cup of tea. And then she explodes. The G at the bottom is great. Judy is pondering her tea, and she's got a letter at the bottom of hers as well. Sure, it's interesting. I like it. If you had players who were curious, not a bad option. But at the same time, if they, oh, you see this G? Yeah, I've got an H. What does that mean? G or F? Okay. Maybe they're going to pop up elsewhere. Could be the beginning of a trail. But if Judy suddenly explodes, it's like, I drank the same tea. There's more pressure. So we've got to get into this thing. I generally find that when I give a hook with pressure attached to it, linked to the players, it gets them to follow the adventures a lot faster than giving them nebulous hooks that don't have an immediate response. So that's something to look at. Angus Boyes says, I'm going to use this as the last example because it's a reverse. The town is in a panic. A mind flayer has decided to open a tavern. We need to be cognizant of the fact that we're playing in science fiction and fantasy environments. A mind flayer opening a tavern under normal circumstances is very odd. So this is a hook. It's not a hook yet. There's no hook. Just that the town is in panic. Are they going to attack the mind flayer? Is the mind flayer's opened a tavern? Why? Clearly it's not aggressive. The townsfolk are in panic. So there's a lot of questions here. Is there an adventure that the PCs want to necessarily jump into straight away? Maybe not necessarily. The mind flayer has decided to open a tavern. The townsfolk is in panic. The lead fishmonger has hired the party to kill the mind flayer. Maybe I do like the idea of switching it around, saying, well, what if there's this this mind flayer that opens a tavern? It's an interesting one. Now, of course, I also have always wanted stories that are gigantic, that are big, that are explosive, that are just go, panic, chaos, and mayhem. I have had players who are like, can we just breathe for a moment? So sometimes having hooks that don't immediately explode will work as well. Bear that in mind. But generally speaking, if you can get the big boom going, if you can get them straight into it, it gets you into your story faster than if you have to sort of really instrument. Depends on the type of game you're playing too as well. That's the other thing. So there we are. Okay, let's go back to your questions. Landon, you had a question which you asked, and it's now dribbled out of my brain. And so I can't remember. We've got about 18 minutes before we end off today's session. So please, back to role-playing questions. Let's have a look and see what is out there. Let's see what's out there. So if you do have questions, ask them now. Okay. Is there a podcast on the way, says Chris Dial. There has been a podcast for a long time, as a matter of fact. It's available on the Patreon space. And did I make this public yet? I don't know if I've made this public yet or not. Oh, God. Oh dear. So I suffer from having thousands of ideas a second, wanting to do them all, and then realizing that I actually have to do them, which takes real time. And I don't have the power to control that. So what we had decided to do, yes, there is a podcast. Yes, it's behind a $3 Patreon paywall. Yes, we are changing that. This is going to go, what we are looking at doing, because at the moment it is what it is, but what we're looking at doing is we are going to release a podcast once a week. You will be able to get that podcast from our Patreon and any podcasts done before if you are on the $3 tier. But the actual podcast itself will be released weekly on a podcast platform. I haven't even started investigating these things yet. I just got hold of my business partner and I said, we do these podcasts and they varied. The current one is called Designing Diabolical Dungeons. Or Dungeons of Diabolical Design. I always mix it around. And I have a guest GM who joins me and we design a dungeon from the philosophy of what goes into the design. We don't physically actually draw it. We certainly could do that if that was something that people wanted, but I don't think it would work so well on a podcast. So we talk about the philosophy behind how do you design a prison that's run by this type of race with this kind of alignment and this kind of problem. Could be sci-fi, could be fantasy, it doesn't matter. They're system agnostic in terms of we don't talk about values and that sort of thing. But that's the current podcast. The previous one was a read-through of a Choose Your Own Adventure series. The one before that was translating Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, I'll get there eventually, into a role-playing adventure. And then before that, there was a live role-playing session. So the podcasts are there. They will become publicly available at no charge in the near future. January, February, sometime around there. Otherwise, go and find the one on Patreon. As I said, it's a $3 tier commitment, but you get access to all of them that have happened before, and that is quite easily 50 hours worth of craziness. Landon says, how do you train yourself not to use your safe filler words? It's a constant battle, Landon. It's such a good question because we do it unconsciously, and it is only those of us who are lucky enough to either be able to listen to ourselves back, as in I watch a show that I've recorded, I'm like, okay, gotta cut that word out. I've busy been part of my proof of the book before it goes to the final layout is reading it out aloud. And the word however has to be abandoned from my vocabulary. It is a useful word. However, it does not need to be used as a conjugation every single time. It is only when there is definitely an alternative. Sometimes a full stop works just as well, and I need to learn that. So I am consciously aware that safe words, and by safe words, these are words that you fall back on. I use a few. Right. So. Anyway. I use those so often, and I hate it. Absolutely hate it. So what's next? Right. What's next? I hate it. And so all you do is every time you say that word, listen out for it and go, you stop saying it. And you just actively try and do that. You just actively try and do that. Wolvia Zandalari says, you said earlier that there were two answers for a party with a bad plan. Let it fail or guide them. Why not allow it to become the solution and add a twist? Why deny the players? If they have a bad... If for example, if there's a compound and they need to rescue someone from the compound, and their plan is to attack the main gates, which you have told them are reinforced and will not go down easily, and that they are heavily guarded and very well spotted, and they decide that that's their plan. They're just going to attack it. Normally, the prisoners might be executed, they might escape out the back, but there's going to be heavy resistance at the front. If the players stick to that plan and logically follow it through, you would come to the conclusion that they should fail and that they should possibly die. If they don't retreat in this massive assault where they are failing, and they continue to push through, they could be captured by the owner of this compound, taken into the cells, and from there then they have to try and escape, and it becomes a prison break rather than breaking in. It's not about suddenly going, well, the guards are no longer at the gate. They've been called away. You could do that, provided there's a strong narrative reason for it. Again, what type of game are you playing? Are you playing a game where thinking through the problems is the solution, or are you playing a game where it's guts and glory? If it's guts and glory, then yes, you're quite right. Try and find ways in which you allow things to happen. And yes, there are consequences, obviously, and it's going to be tough, and death is a potential factor. But that's the game you've set up. If you've set up a game where thinking is critical, where making these kinds of mistakes will lead to disaster, then it's about following precautions. So I suppose the correct answer actually would be, is have you set your game up to be one where they don't have to think too much, or where they do need to think? And that's about reading your players to decide what category they fit in. DragonSoul13 says, to follow up a question I asked last week, the new player I have that is young and new to playing D&D, what tips could you give if they basically ran away from the other players when they try to get them to roleplay? Even when we try to put on a great voice and ask direct questions. Should I just sit down and try to explain what is expected of them when playing? Yes, absolutely. If they're a new player, they might not understand. Why are you talking in this very strange voice to this person? I find it very odd the way that you talk, young man. They might go, what the hell is going on? Is this acting improv? So I think that is also something that we forget, is to give permission to people to say, hey, this is about having fun, guys. So when a monster's talking to you, when an NPC is talking to you, talk as if you are really there. And if you're not comfortable with that, then tell us what you say and how you would say it. Be more descriptive. Remember, some people don't like talking in the first person. Some people like to say, well, my barbarian looks at the old woman and he's basically going to tell her that he thinks she's an idiot. And then he's going to leave. Well, how very rude of you. Just leave. Very impolite. Is what she says as you leave. So you can stick to where you are. In terms of role-playing. But yeah, definitely. Sometimes you need to. Oh, I do use the word absolutely very often. Game Master's Vault. Absolutely. I use it too often. I hate that. Well, I love the fact that with these things can be pointed out. And I think there's two ways of taking it as well. Either you go, oh, no, I never do that. Don't do that. No, you're lying. I refuse. Or you go, no, yeah, all right. Absolutely has just been put on the watch list. Absolutely. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other used to be one of my catchphrases as well. So not even a safe word. It's like an entire phrase. 8 minutes left for the session today. We've got lots of questions coming through. White Tiger 225 says, what the most mundane quest that your players actually had quite a bit of fun with? Most mundane. I very seldom end up with mundane. Usually there's always a twist to it. I'm just trying to think of Ghost of Saltmarsh. I went to go and try and book a room in a hotel. That empty net hotel bar and thing. I had set up that there was a giant pit fight happening underneath the bar and that there was a murder mystery that was going to happen. And one of the players said something which caused the barman to freak out, and that was it. They had to leave. It became mundane, even though it wasn't intended to be. They seem to have quite a lot of fun with that. Landon, another question. Is it okay to imply or lead players to believe they outsmarted you or went a direction you didn't expect when they pretty much acted how you hoped as positive reinforcement? It's called How to Be a GM, and that is to always make sure that they think that it's their plan. Meanwhile, of course, no. Sometimes we are genuinely surprised, and sometimes it's like, oh my god, you finally got there. Well done. 10 points to all of you thickies. Really? You really took so long to get there. So yes, absolutely. And of course I'm being exaggeratory there. I would never think of my players as being thick. Often. So the idea is it's about players going on a journey of success. We don't play Dungeons and Dragons to fail. We don't play fantasy RPGs to fail continuously. We play because it allows us to be heroes. And yeah, that's for me the important thing. So it doesn't cost you anything to say, oh, you figured it out. And you had to give you 20 clues, but you figured it out. So yes, I don't think it's evil to allow people to think that they've solved it. They did genuinely solve it, usually. Is it when they do something surprising, you're like, yeah, I don't have a problem with that. But I derive joy out of other people figuring stuff out. That's one of the reasons why I love being a teacher, is when there's that moment and things just click. I personally get a sense of satisfaction out of that. Catherine Bischoff says, do you have any suggestions on how to thread a... on how to thread a secondary and small campaign with PCs for a one-shot into the main campaign. The players loved their one-shot. Absolutely. Part of the book, Nautical Campaigns, I know I keep going back to it, but it's a useful and handy reference. Part of the book was 12 adventures that revolve around nautical kind of themes and things, and inspired by backers. And the one backer gave me this very interesting crew. And I didn't want to write another adventure of sailing on the high seas or that sort of thing. And I thought, well, one of the adventures I haven't written yet is a treasure hunt. And that's high seas, finding lost treasure. It's like, that's a given, isn't it? 12 adventures, and I'm still going, oh, I should probably do one of those. But then I went, treasure hunt's mundane. What if the treasure hunt is a hunt? So the treasure hunt is actually a trap. And I went, well, the only way that that's going to work, because I wanted it to kind of be, I wanted to evoke this perilous, life-threatening treasure hunt through dense jungles where the characters are being ripped apart by everything, with a bit of Predator, the movie Predator, involved in that as well. So, you know, I wanted that sense of terror. And I went, well, you can't do this because your player characters are dying. Quite literally, within the first 10 minutes, something bumps against the leg of the one PC as they are walking up the river at the beginning of the adventure. And then the next minute, they get consumed. So I said, okay, well, actually, and the instructions in the adventure say, have your players create characters with these names and these stats, and these, it doesn't give the stats, but these names and these races and these occupations. You're going to play a one-shot treasure hunt, and the end of that treasure hunt, it ends off, hopefully, with one of the characters, the PC NPC, if you like, or the one-shot character, surviving and getting back to a tavern and then telling that tale to their own PCs. PCception, right? So PC NPC. I haven't heard that very often, but it's a player character NPC that is there to introduce me. So it's a one-shot within a bigger campaign. So if you can do that, if you can say, well, those characters in the one-shot have now met your main campaign, or are in that world and now are heroes that you now have to fight against, that's fine. That, I think, is a way to take it. At least that's how I would do it off the top of my head. Last question for today. Four Kings says, at what point is it justified to set out to kill a PC? I don't think it is ever justified to kill a PC as the GM. I think it's justified for rulers, for people with money, for people with influence to hire assassins and bounty hunters to go and kill a PC. I think it's justified that they will try their hardest. I think it would be unjustified if those bounty hunters were designed by the GM to specifically overcome the powers of the PC. If you really wanted to do that, it would be justified to have the PC being followed by mysterious figures who always withdraw, and those figures are basically learning the strengths and weaknesses of the PC. So you could do it as this long series of learning the PC's strengths and weaknesses so that the perfect assassin could be hired to kill them. But I would never advocate the GM sets out to kill the PC. The world that the PC is in can try to kill them and should try to kill them on a regular basis. That's what makes it interesting. But from what I can see in your question, it's about the GM wanting to kill a PC because the PC might be irritating, they might be disruptive to the game. There are other solutions out there, depending on the situation, that you can have a look at and use there. So for those of you that did not get your questions answered, because I know I missed quite a lot of them, I do apologise. We are only human and we only have so much time, and we are out of time, as a matter of fact, on this particular day. It's 1 o'clock here in Tokyo. I have another live show later on this afternoon. For those of you willing to stay up late, Project Deos, that world map-making software that is a sponsor of our channel and that we are super excited for. I am meeting with them, running a show on their YouTube channel, where we talk about some cool and exciting stuff that is going to be that's coming out already with regards to that Kickstarted show. We've got a new episode that dropped today on Kickstarters that you should have a look at if you like to collect dice. And what else? All the usual stuff continues. We will be releasing a Christmas special adventure for all of our Patreons over December. We're going to release it early so that you do have it over the Christmas weekend or week. I realize is now next week. Dear God, I need more time. So we will be releasing that. It's another fun little goblin adventure that has people... Well, you're trying to find your war goats. I'm just going to leave it at that. So that will be coming out next week, earlier than usual. And yeah, podcasts coming out every week. Got more to record later on this afternoon, as a matter of fact. Anyway, until next time, thank you for your questions. Thank you for those that donated in Super Chat and on Twitch, for the subscribers that have joined us. I really, really do appreciate it. And yes, if I don't see you next week, a little part of me is going, next week is Christmas. No, so it will be on Monday the 23rd, so there will be a show because, well, why not? Until then, however, I wish you and yours the very happiest of gaming.